Hey guys, welcome to Ojamas on Air. We're Ojama down today. Rest in peace, Joe. He's not actually dead, but he's dead to us. So
Yeah, he's got like real life responsibilities. He doesn't want to talk about the hit new Yu-Gi-Oh format,
yeah,
Genesys.
Genesis. Whoa, whoa. So yeah, we're kind of coming to you with. Well, it's not necessarily stats. It's more we were talking like it's kind of general trends that we've kind of seen happening with Genesis format. Uh, where we've had one technical ban list, I suppose, or points update.
Second,
Oh, yes.
because there was the one a day after the format started. Um, but today's really it's pretty much a yap between us, and then hopefully any of you watching want to share. Callum's got his first big Genesis event coming up in
Wow.
2 weeks' time.
I guess you can say big. It's more just going to the open and playing a million pods. So
It's going to be on YGO Pro, and given there's only 5 Genesis events so far, it's a big Genesis event.
pods aren't on YG Pro.
I assume the UK Open one will be, because
None of the other ones have been like the French Open or the.
okay, Callum wants to play locals for Genesis, and he wants to do well.
Well,
so
the Open. The main one's the Open. Doing pods at the
yes.
Open. I want me some mats.
Yes, so we wanted to just take some time to pretty much just discuss the change in the format from the first points update list, and really just explore what decks seem to be popular, what decks aren't very popular despite sort of potential in the format, as well as some updates to cards. And it's where we'd like some input from you guys is, if you play Genesis regularly, is there any cards you think are sort of being slept on, decks that seem to be underperforming? The data for Genesis is already quite limited, as we realized. Like, we're only getting postings of the YCS invitationals that happen after everyone gets their pod. So there's only 32 players. That's happened for 3 YCSs now, I believe. So again, limited data, and it's Genesis data is always going to be hard to capture because our point updates are every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So we really just wanted to talk about some of the cards and what might be important to play in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. So pre-ban list, I think was the main one. The one that we were seeing the most tops with was Vanquish. Like when you actually looked at, I think there was 2 events really that came up that were pre-ban list, which was we had like Fafa's first kind of tournament he did. Then there was Sao Paulo and,
Anaheim.
and Anaheim. Was that all beforehand? Was it?
Yeah, that was all on the initial sort of post first points update. Vanquistle, I think, had 3 to 4 tops across some of those events. I haven't actually checked Farfas for details, but I know that in Anaheim and Sao Paulo it had tops in both of those.
Yes.
And subsequently then got its main deck engine. I think Holy Sue then got a massive increase in points to try to deter it from being as strong.
Yeah, and then even on, so we were talking about this as well. You can't. We wish we could take the data from Dueling Book, but it also was probably the most played deck on Dueling Book as well. And even looking at like we did a deck interview for Kong's Cards when they did Genesis, and the person that won that was playing Vanquish Soul, and their friend also won Anaheim's with this basically almost the same list apart from maybe 2 or 3 cards. So that was like pretty big initially. And then we also found like when actually looking at the data, there was a fair spread of just decks. Like there wasn't a million decks. There wasn't the same decks getting repetitive tops. It was like mainly like lots of different ones. We were looking and there was random ones like there's Desperate Branded got a top, Exorcister, Genesys, Odeon, Onomat, Generator,
Super
Quant, Archmage, Goatee. I'm just reading off a few. Even Fire King Dirac had some. And then we even had like a couple hybrids of like Super Quant Punk was there. Different Typhoon kind of versions like the Radiant. But yeah, it was a bit more blanket. There was lots of different decks. But then obviously list hit. Some decks got like a slight tap. Like Radiant realistically got a slight tap, whereas Vanquish just got hit over the head with a shovel, really, to be honest, didn't it?
Yeah, their points update seemed quite tailored, which I guess is what you want. Genesis succeeded in its first goal, as the list you've said has kind of just clarified, that a lot of decks are popular and viable. Again, before we get a Genesis YCS, it's going to be hard to sort of validate that information because you could just play and get lucky. It could, like, a pod is 4 rounds, so it could just be your day where you draw, good hands for those first 4 rounds, and then you do decently well into the invitational, win a round or 2, and you get a performing deck list. It doesn't compare to the same way we judge consistency and deck's viability in the TCG, where, you now need to do well across 14 rounds of Swiss to get top cut at the YCS. So you get a lot more diversity in Genesis from that. But coming up to it, what we'd like to see is, well, that has already started to slightly change, and maybe this is a sign that Genesis is getting slightly more solved as we've gone into the second point adjustment.
Yeah.
Saying that purely because the Radiant Typhoon engine and the Goblin engine seems to be
The
quite
most,
popular.
yeah.
Rank 3s being paired with a bunch of different strategies, Mekanko,
Yeah.
Runic for the Radiant Typhoon, Onomat, as well as then some random other decks I'm sure that haven't actually got YGO Pro list just yet.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's almost becoming a bit more solved on what engines are strong.
Yeah.
And then it's becoming, okay, now how do we counter that in the Genesis format itself? I think like one key observation was the Onomat list that topped at the most recent YCS, Pittsburgh.
It won it, didn't it?
It did win it, but I believe I've seen a few lists that are playing the Onomat continuous spell, which helps protect against your Onomat cards can't be targeted. And it also has a pop, I believe, when you perform an XYZ or something of that nature.
Okay.
But it makes a lot of sense when you think, okay, what cards am I struggling with in the format? It's typically targeted removal exists in Genesis. And also all the Runic cards are targeting destruction.
Yep.
Or effect negation, so you can completely dodge those and blank those with one continuous spell. And that pop can also get rid of Fountain.
Yeah, which is pretty big. Yeah, I think I definitely agree with saying like the 3-axis seems to be massive. Like just from like some of the lists that were like got in front of us, like Mechanical Goblin Bikers, there was Goblin Biker on its own, and then like the Onomat Radiant existed, which was just Radiant in there as like a 3 package. But not only that, but like Radiant Typhoon across 2 events has had 3 in like both top 8s.
So it's kind of replaced Vanquish Soul as one of the more represented.
Yes, I would say so. And like it's crazy because like in its own way, like Mechanical Goblin Bikers is like Goblin Bikers, but it's still like slightly different. And same with the whole Onomat Radiant Typhoon. Like they're only using it as like a 3 package, but it's still present. It's highly present.
Part of me is curious if that's to do with the engine obviously natively wants to play Mystical Space Typhoon. And back row removal is quite rare in Genesis until post side. We'll get into sort of popular cards in the sideboard in a bit, but the Radiant Typhoon engine does give you a chance to sort of get an MST as part of your standard combo while setting up, you know, a Totem Bird or going into a 3 like the Phantom Knights 3 that allows you to pop a card on the field. So maybe that's one of the reasons why, is it gives a deck that doesn't have access to back row removal, it gives them an option.
Yeah, I think as well. And it's also like, it's 3 different cards that can search each other and then fully grab each other. So like, no matter what, you're going to have like the 2 bodies to go into an XYZ in your deck thinning and stuff like that. And I think there's, when you actually think about it, how many other decks have had their main searcher hit? Like every deck, even Glabbies have like Proving Grounds gone, like Bonfire. Whereas Radiant's like one of those decks that's walking around still with its search card for any random.
Yeah, and this causes the concern of, is it because it's such a new archetype of, are they going to consistently be a bit hesitant to hit these new cards as they release? I don't think it's super relevant, but I think, well, people are worried about the upcoming Killer Tune set, which I believe is out in the next 2-3 weeks.
Not too sure.
As of the time of recording this, obviously. But obviously, if those cards come out without a pre-hit adjustment, that might be incredibly strong. Killer Tune acting like Draco Tail, but you would essentially remove all the point reductions for cards like Ketu, Famina, and be able to do some very disgusting combos on your opponent's turn 1.
Yeah, literally, like turn 0 place, like, and that brings us to another one. Like, so another deck that has been seemingly performing quite well has been Draco Tail, which was interesting because like a lot of hits. Like I've been seeing lists where people play like 1/5 mana and then they'll like max out a lot more on the spells. And like even there was one list we were looking at that was playing the Poly and the King of Swamp, was it?
King of Swamp, yes.
Which is interesting. But then just being able to set 3 traps.
Yeah, they had a very interesting list from Pittsburgh, had King of the Swamp plus the Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon in the extra deck to reset the Draco Tail traps, I believe.
Something like that.
After use, which is very creative. It's one of the things that Genesis seems to be doing, is it's getting a lot more creative deck building and even card choices. Like if we think about some of the more popular cards, Vidos was hyped in the TCG. I believe it, if you check like its card marker or TCG player history, it had a point where it jumped to £20 a copy because everyone thought this card's crazy into a format. And it was, you know, we were looking at like, I think Ubel Snake Eyes format when it released. So Ubel, Nightmare Throne, crazy card, just get rid of that immediately. but then it lost its home, and its value tanked, and obviously its playability was just not real unless you wanted to play Ashen. Whereas in Genesis, it seems to be one of the most popular sided cards.
Which is very interesting because I'm not sure like what decks field spell really matters. Are people that worried about Runic?
Could be. There's probably a few things. If people thought Vanquish Soul still had some semblance of playability, obviously Start's a crazy card. I think the Eldritch field spell, or it's a zombie support card, a free agent from one of the recent sets.
Yes.
As a field spell. Runic Fountain, another good example. Treasures of the Kings for Odeon, another field spell.
Of course, yes.
So quite a lot that you can do. It's like a minimal interrupt, but given it's a free hand trap in Genesis,
yeah,
you're essentially getting another hand trap that you can just play, and it gives you a body that's quite hard to remove.
I was gonna say, it is a beefy boy, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty big on the stat line, and it also has a board wipe effect when it's removed from the field.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. So that's like another thing. And then like the other deck that is also seeing a lot of tops in comparison to them is Punk as well. Punk, I think it makes sense.
Punk.
It's got its time back in the sunlight again a wee bit, but it's interesting for a reason, I think, because it's one of those decks that can really like hardly touch again as well. But it's just a deck that just churns hand traps. A deck that can just draw so much card advantage. It can put up like a relatively minimalistic board. Realistically, it's not got crazy amounts going on with it, right? It's not crazy oppressive, but it's just the hand traps you can still do, and then like you still have a little bit of like. It's layered as well because you'll be able to get a trap involved, so you can get like a pop or a negate. So it's layered, so it's not necessarily like a nasty engine. It just pairs well with hand traps and stuff like that.
Does it have the XYZ at points? The Jam Fever?
No, the only thing that's worth points is Foxitude.
Wow.
So it's actually insane. Well, you got Pep as well. Pep is like 20 points, but
Pep's great because Genesis games typically tend to go longer than like the standard TCG 2 to 3 turns clock that you're currently looking at.
True, but time-wise, I find it's actually quicker because people doing less on that turns out.
Yes, much quicker, but having Pep there is just a game ender, which can be like out of nowhere, and there's probably not many cards in Genesis that are interacting with a Pep made on a turn 3.
Yeah, it's also big because if your opponent makes a towers, you can just drop a Pep. Like you can just keep crashing over that towers and just keep holding on for dear life, really.
Yeah, cards that seemingly are getting more popular in the sideboard is single target kaijus across a few different ones. I think the insect one can be played because some of the sea cards are still seeing play in the side deck, and they can obviously search kaijus. But it seems like everyone's gotten out for Magnus from Super Quants, Liger Dancer from Lunalight, which, while not maybe the most popular style of decks, it seems like people are well prepared for them.
Yeah, agreed. So like those have kind of been like the main ones, really. But like, so like we've talked about some of the popular side cards, and especially like mainly side decks. But there's one trend that I've noticed since the beginning, and it just seems to be very prevalent. Is most side decks kind of have the same vibe. There'll be like 3 Cosmic. There'd be like another. There'd be 3 Kaijus maybe. There would be 3 Ultimate Slayer, and there'll be 3 Dark Ruler. I feel like that has been most side decks I've seen for
like a very staple set of board breakers used.
Yeah.
Which I think there's not many points associated to those cards. That's correct?
None. I don't think any of them. Yeah.
I don't play the format, so I'm not too well versed. But it does seem like what you're trying to deal with, it makes sense. I was quite, when we were talking about filming this video, I was saying I was quite surprised seeing Cosmic so much because A, the Radiant Typhoon engine is very popular. The Runic engine's quite popular with Destruction. So a lot of decks already have some inherent backer removal going about in them. But the Cosmic is there more for things like Odeon, where you can now get rid of the Apophis, and instead of MST popping it, where they'll get to search the embodiment of Apophis. If you Cosmic it obviously just won't be there anymore.
Yeah.
Runic Fountain, getting it completely rid of it in the banish.
Well, you can't get it back anyway anymore because if it hits a grave,
you don't have,
can't.
You don't have the things. And then the other one is Eldritch. Obviously, is probably the most popular one of why you want to banish spell traps.
Yeah, because they can be problematic. Yeah, it is interesting saying that because even in like some of those Radiant decks, you will still see like there's 2 MST in the deck, and if they're playing Runic as well, they'll be playing Tips and Destructions, and people will be playing Cosmics. And I feel like it is massively to do those decks. Like I've found like Eldritch hasn't really gotten any tops from what I've seen, but it is so problematic. I feel like, especially with like when I was playing Punk, just the new Dogmatica hand trap card the one that allows you to set a punishment.
Fleur-de-lis, the Thunder,
Yeah.
Thunderous.
So Fleur-de-lis, like, because that deck can play it, right? Fleur-de-lis will just kill Punk, like, honestly, like, on its own. Like,
Yeah.
well, by the time you get to the point where Fleur-de-lis can interact, that's left, right, good night. You can't really extend further if you haven't got, like, enough stuff. So, like, that's been, like, kind of a kryptonite when I've been playing Punk, personally, so I've had to, like, try and play around that sort of deck, and Cosmic into that has been really helpful. And then, like, playing all of these, like, pop cards have just been really handy. Like, there's so many decks that will just set 4, set 3, set 4, and then pass. Like, even, say, Exorcist at a point would, like, side in.
They would have Returnia, they would have, like, packs potentially that they want to set
So
at
much
some
stuff.
point if they've used one. It seems like with the pace of the format, back row's a little bit more valuable in most people's deck.
Mhm.
And there's a bit more, there's cards people are happy to just sit on rather than, in TCG, everything interacts from the hand, or
Yeah.
there's a million cards going on in the field. We'll hold a 5-mana, my impulse is in hand. I don't have to worry about stuff like that in Genesys.
So it's interesting, but
do you think the TCG trend, so just with Draco Teal doing quite well at Pittsburgh, do you think you could see the trend again of double Cyclone from the TCG moving to Genesys? Because it still synergizes in the same way with some of the other archetypal cards, like the MST decks obviously wants to play a bunch of quick plays in back row. Double Cyclone, a quick play that also, can help. It's free removal still because you're going to activate a quick play anyway, so you just pop your own quick play.
Potentially, I feel like people would try it, but I don't know how well it would do, just because I don't know how many Dracotail mirror matches you're going to end up having. I feel like that's probably one of the best places for it, like, to, like, help against Flame. Flame is
Flame's the one, like, it's typically used for,
so, like dodging that and, like, popping something else. So I can't tell, but I feel like at the moment, like, Dracotail's taking up a big percentage over there in, like, standard, isn't it? But, like,
yes,
over in Genesis, I still feel like it's probably not even taking up 10% of the list, to be honest. So I don't know if it's worth doing that when it could be a hell of a lot more lists.
Yeah, and you could just play a Cosmic, which is a bit more on your pace to activate. You don't have to worry about getting rid of your own card.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but
in getting rid of cards, that seems to be what the Slayer's brought in for. Both every extra deck right now seems to be playing the Malong package and maybe the Fossil Warrior, Skull Warrior as the other card to pop.
Yeah.
Or Garura just to draw and cycle through some more cards. Seems like post side, like everyone's got that in the main board, so the post side, the Ultimate Slayer just has an array of all types to go through. I did see one list on Archmage, I believe it was, is playing the Lunalite Perfume Dancer as their Ultimate Slayer target so that they can out Liger in battle phase by making it 0 attack.
That's hilarious.
It was something done in the TCG for a bit. I think Draco Teal players looked at playing Cartesia with Grangranol in the extra deck.
Okay.
So because Grangranol's effect on summon is it can dump a level 6 or higher dark monster from main or extra. So you could dump the Perfume Dancer, use its graveyard effect to make a Liger Dancer outable if you just have Cartesia and a light.
That's so funny.
Such a weird small thing, but it seems to be something that we had seen, and it's just nice to see it also happening in Genesys. But I think with Lunalite's lack of popularity, probably people will stay for like the standard Ultimate Slayer package.
Yeah.
What I'm surprised about is the Dark Ruler no more, though. Slayer makes sense for 1-to-1 removal cards. It's pretty basic. Every time the TCG has formats where you're typically looking at a powerful card that you want to get rid of and you don't want your opponent to respond to. I'll take Malice format. Some players looked at using the Boral Code
yes, I remember
engine
this.
in the graveyard. You remember because I tried to do it and I could not ever get the win with it. To get rid of the Malice Allied Code, or if they ended on Cryptor Pass, to try to remove their bodies that way. But that makes sense when there's like sort of single target cards. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't seem like in Genesys there's that many decks that are just putting up sort of one obtrusive body that they're trying to get rid of, or would that be the case?
I wouldn't find that often. Like a lot of the times, like it depends on the deck you're playing against. Say like take for example like Punk or the Radiant deck. Normally they would put up like an XYZ that says no to something, and then it would have like some interaction pipe. With Punk, it's like the sync off into the bounce 3, and then in Radiant it might be, well, more than likely it'll be the spin back one, or the little dude that'll bring him back, the big
so you're
bird.
Trying to get rid of like some problematic cards, which is where the Slayer checks out.
Like it'll check one, then check the other.
Dark Ruler no more. Doesn't seem like the boards are going big enough to have validation for playing that card. So my question is just to people that play Genesis, why is that card so popular, and what's like the issue cards that we want to play Dark Ruler for because an Ultimate Slayer isn't enough? Or is it just the case that there is only one problem card, but we want to play 6 copies of removal for it, and Dark Ruler happens to be another negation card that is not pointed?
Well, there's another thing to think about as well. It's like, yes, these are factors, but also it's not pointed. So
Yes.
there might be better removal that people do want to play, but those have points on it. So it's kind of like,
Yeah, like let's say the Fallen and the Virtuous being a really interesting card that's shaken up like TCG play, but was immediately pointed for Genesis upon its release. Would it be people would shift to cards like that if they were lower points?
I imagine so. Like, especially like, well, it's archetypal as well, isn't it? But like, I think a lot of the times people are trying to be very specific with their points, and Dark Ruler's no points. So like, yes, there's probably better suiting stuff, and Dark Ruler no more killing, like turning off 2 cards probably feels not necessary, but it's still trading well points wise, if that makes sense. Like, in terms of deck building, like you can put that in something else that's like very impactful for your deck, or even in hand traps and stuff.
Make your engine slightly stronger.
Yeah,
it's just very interesting because Dark Ruler seems to have, in terms of cards that have lost popularity from lists, evenly was the other mass removal card.
Yeah,
which seemed to lose popularity. I believe it is pointed at 7 points or something
10,
around there.
I think even
10. So it is a commitment, but it's obviously much stronger when you're looking at many back row decks in the format.
Yeah.
Odeon, Eldritch existing, even Draco Teal, if that's doing popular. Look at a TCG player, Draco Teal player, tell them you're going to evenly them, and they're probably a little sad at least. But you have that like kind of like difference, but people aren't willing to commit those 30 points.
Yeah.
For evenly anymore, and instead are opting for Dark Ruler. I just found that quite an interesting change over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, 30 points. I mean, it makes sense in like to some degree.
That's a pot agreed.
Yeah, 100%. I think as well, also putting in that like kind of same like bracket is they were brought down, but like Lightning Storm, Heavy Storm, and like Duster, all of them were like brought down a wee bit. I think Heavy Storm is like 10 points or something like.
But still not just worthwhile because everything else, like you want to. It seems as an onlooker into Genesis that what you want is like a strong engine deck.
Yeah.
And you don't mind committing more points to having that engine push, be that pot of greed for your Radiant Runic deck where you're just cycling through more cards, so your game plan's much more consistent. Be it 5 mana and Ketu for Draco Teal where you can play a bit more. And in Punk, maybe it's the hand trap so that you have more non-engine to work with.
Yeah, I suppose like the engine in Punk isn't necessarily a strong one, but it's consistent. I think that's the big one. So I guess you could say it's strong in like its consistency, and like it can churn out OTK quite quickly, and then it can put up a board. It's not like phenomenal in comparison to some of the other ones. I think the big thing is you can just throw all the points in the hand traps, and you're going to be drawing a million cards. So like I think it's one of the concepts where that the non-engine is the strongest part of the deck, whereas the engine is just it does things. It puts up a little board and can crash through a wee bit.
The Pep's a pretty good piece of, I would count that as Punk engine at this point.
It's not been played.
Really?
Yeah, and
I have very fond memories of when I started playing the TCG. I was playing Rescuous and someone played Punk. And I felt great. I got to Turbulent set 4. I unfortunately had a Hydrant in attack position because I normally summoned it. And that Pep killed me.
Yeah, Pep go boom. Yeah. But it's interestingly because like of the 2 Punks I've seen, like there was one list which was actually playing like the E-Telly one.
Yep. They were playing like the Duelist Advanced Psychic support as well. Like they had the fusion cards.
Yep.
The level 6 as well. They seem to play. That's quite interesting to.
I think that deck might have been playing Pep, but like the standard, just like pure, from what I've been mostly seeing, has just been hand traps, and then just like a standard engine, to be honest. I did see there was one interesting one where someone did try and play Therion package in it, because
what's the psychic? Is there a psychic in Therion?
Yes, there is. Well, but the way it would work would be you would go up into the level 8 Mantis guy, Mantis of Diabolical something.
Oh,
or the
Diabolantis, the Diabolical Mantis or whatever.
That one. And basically you would send the Lily Borea? Yeah. And then basically at the end of your combo you would have 2 level 3 punks that were both Earth. So you overlay from Lay of Trees, which is free, no points cost, which can then bring back the Lily Borea.
And then get this Colosseum.
The Regulus. And then on your opponent's turn, you'll still probably be able to like Therion Regulus negate, and he's an 8, so he can get synchro off with
3.
So you can still get to your Punk stuff.
That's quite interesting. That's
Yeah,
also quite creative. Odd though, because you're sitting on like a weird bit of bodies, whereas obviously if you
yeah,
thought back to like 2023 or 4 plant decks, when they make things like Malias, or if they make any of the sort of Rika XYZs and a Lily Borea, we can get that off field immediately by
yeah.
making a link.
Can't do that.
Not the possibility here. I think the only other cards that sort of came up was Rescuous Impulse losing a lot of popularity.
Yeah, well, it's pointed, so it makes sense. But yeah, even Impulse was like 5 points each, and I'm pretty sure like Firestar got like 10 or something.
Oh wow, they hate Rescuous.
Yeah, but like it's crazy. I think people are not seeing it worth 25 points. They must be like, don't see a point anymore.
Again, that's almost a pot of greed.
Yeah,
Like Impulse, to be fair, Fire Attacker says draw 2, but it's like situational.
yeah,
It's also got a brick in it, so I can see why. But it's quite interesting to see the developments. I think like the last card maybe to talk about is Mirage of Nightmare seeing play, being a forbidden card in the TCG that we now know in retrospect that this isn't the case, but I remember when the Megatins this year were being leaked, there was a lot of discussion on what card, like they were going to do this massive ban list that essentially said we're going to bring off a bunch of cards.
yeah.
I think the leaks had the Galaxy Dark Matter Dragon, the rank 8 one or rank 9 potentially, that essentially lets you send a dragon as cost. That got reprinted as like one of the first leaks, and everyone thought this card's going to come off the next ban list. Potentially to support like the Dragon Link support we know is coming in Burst Protocol.
Yep.
As well as I think
Heavy Storm as well. People.
Heavy Storm. I think Mirage of Nightmare was the other one.
Yeah.
And when I saw Mirage of Nightmare, that's where I put my hands up and said, "There's no way this is all coming off in the ban list."
Yeah. Something's cooking, but not that much.
But turns out it was all for Genesys format to make sure players had accessible reprints to these cards that haven't been reprinted since
Yeah.
their banning in the TCG or much prior. But Mirage of Nightmare seems to be seeing play in the Runic and Radiant decks.
I think it's specifically the Runic ones, so they can draw it for Fountain to be in use. So like, I noticed there was 2 lists in particular that played this. One of them had it in the main deck, which I do disagree with, because like it only feels good going first, realistically. Like going second, I find it kind of like, because it's basically a dead card until you get around to your opponent's like standby.
Yeah, you're trying to go in full survival mode, which is more likely in Genesys to get there, but still, if you're just saying, I'm going to activate this card, like I need to play through your board, activate this card, it needs to stick until standby phase. My Fountain also needs to stick probably.
Yeah.
And then I'll have plays.
So
that feels like it's a difficult thing to get to happen.
It is interesting as well, because like I do find like from testing Radiant, like there is a lot of times that you end up with like 2 MSTs in your hand. So like it's not often that you will need to pop 2 things, like 2 spell and traps in your opponent's turn. It's like having that Mirage and being able to draw those 4 cards, and you can probably just get away with like MSTing that, so you don't have to get like the repercussions of discarding again. And it doesn't actually feel bad, if that makes sense, because you're also getting the negate off it, and you're probably still going to have another MST. So like it never feels bad. I've not tested it too much, because in my mind I do feel like it's a little bit cope, because you're normally tending to play like a smaller Runic engine.
I think it's one of those, it's a card that's currently banned, so it's creative, and can we make it work?
Yeah, I think people also draw 4, right? Because like that's the maximum you can draw off it, right?
Yes.
But like at the same time, you could draw random, right? And you could have wasted like a couple of Runic cards to like get all the like get your stuff set up, get the Fountain Field and like cycle stuff out your hand. And when it's just kind of like, would you rather just kept them in hand? Like you might have shot a Slumber and a Tip.
Yeah, it can also like mess up your tempo quite slightly in the game.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting card. I want to see more of that development in Genesys, where these cards just aren't playable.
Yeah.
I don't know exact points list, but for example, I always find it interesting when we see in the OCG, they're still playing cards like Red Reboot. They're still playing cards like Pointer of the Red Lotus, which they just have legal. With Dragon Link, obviously, Borreload Savage Dragon is there. But I find what I was hoping for with Genesys, and I still hope, is that we'll see more decks making use of cards in the ban list. The fun ones. I know like post side, Dimensional Fissure is like a very popular card right now.
Yeah, sucks.
And that's probably only going to increase in popularity and hopefully points with the Exosister support that we're getting in Burst Protocol, because that'll make that deck quite strong in this format.
Yeah, because I mean they were like that is another deck that fell off, right? But they felt good, right? They didn't feel exceptional. They had a top, and the deck did stuff like the fact that like DD Crow is free, and they could just DD Crow something out of your graveyard, which would trigger their cards.
Yep.
It's pretty nuts, right? But then they suffer from the fact that people were playing Kaijus to go over the big one. But yeah, coming into their new release and stuff like that, like the deck will benefit so much. So I feel like that's probably part of the reason why they were like, yeah, not too fast. We can put some points. I'm pretty sure Pax was also pointed. So it's another situation of the search card for that deck was hit, but then still for others, nope.
Yeah, we'll see how the upcoming list change. I think we're due for one in 4 weeks now. So
I think that's what you said the other day.
Yeah, Konami's giving us a Christmas Genesys list to kick off 2026 with.
I think there'll be a couple deaths on that list. I think Radiant and Runic probably have seen their time a wee bit too long. I feel like they should have been hit more by this list.
Well, that'll be maybe one of the last lists we get before the first Genesys YCS. I think that is scheduled for early 2026.
Yep.
So Konami's probably going to take the harder approach to make sure that's a positive event.
Yeah.
We don't want a YCS Anaheim Crystron Stunlock event to be streamed again. The Genesys event will have a lot of eyes on it from new players and old players getting back into the game.
I mean, like, say there, like, sorry to drag out, but there is like still, like, say with Punk as well, to mention again, like Gravity Collapse. That is still that is a floodgate that still exists. For those who don't know, Gravity Collapse is you tribute a
synchro monster. I believe it's like Solemn. When your opponent summons a monster, you contribute a synchro monster to negate the summon, and then the important part is for the rest of the turn, your opponent cannot summon cards.
Which is like, it's just dumb. Like
it's dumb, but it's interesting where it's only playable in certain decks, being really Punk right now.
Yeah, I would say.
Potentially Elven Notes in Burst Protocol. That's a new synchro archetype they're getting. But it's not great if decks like Odian and Eldritch are very popular, where
doesn't care.
And even Runic MST, where I don't care if I summon anymore. I've got interruptions ready to go.
Yeah, I have enough. Doesn't matter to me. Pretty sure, like, does it have to be a normal summon that indicates as well, or is it just the first summon? I can't remember.
I don't know. I'm an ethical duelist. I don't play Floodgate cards. If you met me at Nats last year, no, you didn't. I think I was playing Protoss Lock and Ryziel, so
the boy, the dude.
Glad he's gone.
Yeah, but so yeah, that kind of like summarizes, like, they seem to be like the most recent trends. I don't think we've missed anything there.
Yeah, just be sure to share any thoughts on any decks we've missed. Obviously, we've just looked at sort of what's on YGO and what Callum's experienced on Lovely DB. Konami, that doesn't stand for a website, if you're asking. Wink, wink. But if you're playing anything else, let us know. Obviously, Genesys is quite diverse. What are you having success with? What cards are you having success with in specific situations? Like post-side, do you have something for these more popular matchups that you think is completely crazy and being slept on? Would love to hear about all of that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for listening. And
tell Joe to come back to us.
Yeah, RIP Joe in the chat.